Time to service the rangefinder for this Retina IIS camera. So the first thing to do is remove the arm. You can see that this needs serviced. If I press this lever, press the arm in, that should spring back immediately. You'll see how slow that is to ooze its way back out to the forward position. So it's certainly sticky and certainly needs to be serviced. Let's see if I can get this screw loose. Take that arm off. That tool I used here is designed for removing pinhead type screws. There's two little tiny pins. The position of one of them is adjustable, and you can use that to engage the screw like that. Alternatively, you can often get away with just a stiff pair of tweezers or a pair of circlip pliers, snap ring pliers that have had the tips suitably ground. Alright, so that's those components. I'll pop those to one side. I want to continue taking this apart. This bracket holds the rear glass into the rangefinder, and the rear glass is pretty much flat on one side and convex on the other. The flat side goes to the outside, goes to this side. The convex side goes to the inside. Just remove this screw, which will have a little washer underneath it. It does. These are shims used to position this component, and this component has our frame lines on it. Now this is just basically it's a piece of film. It's a piece of, for all practical purposes. It has a piece of plastic in the front of it that's just looks like ground glass, but actually it's just plastic, a diffuser. That I take that out because that cannot go through the ultrasonic cleaner. It would turn to custard. So we don't do that. Now, looking at the state of the mirrors here, this is the front surface silvered mirror. That looks relatively clean. I can see, you know, a little bit of haze on that, nothing particularly bad. At this end, the eyepiece end, that's a semi-silvered mirror. The silvering is on the inside, on the eyepiece side, not the front. The front is just plain glass. You can clean the front surface with a cotton bud and some glass cleaner. Leave the inside surface alone if you're going to do things like that. You'll polish the silver right off it, and then it'll be absolutely useless. So this, I'm just going to wipe off the grease from this, and then I will pop that into the ultrasonic cleaner, give it a brief cleaning. So I just want to get rid of all that grease first, and the graphite grease for the return spring was on the rangefinder right there. While I've got this, I'll wipe the arm, remove the grease from that. The old lubricant, of course, dries out and goes sticky over time. Just removing the grease from the bush, any that's under the fixing screw, and any that's on the wavy washer that keeps the rangefinder arm moving smoothly in a fixed vertical plane, so that your images, your aligned images, aren't wandering up and down in your finder. Alright, off to the cleaner. I have the main body of the rangefinder clean now from the ultrasonic cleaner. I'm just cleaning the main lens here on the moving arm. I'm just using normal domestic glass cleaner, nothing exotic. It's usually best to clean the outside surface, the flat surface first, because it's very hard to judge how clean you have the internal surface. You can judge how clean you have the outside surface, the flat surface, by judging reflections off that surface. It's harder to do that with a curved surface. It's easier to judge how clean the glass is by looking through it at the curved surface. That all looks good. And the rear eyepiece lens needs to be cleaned in a similar fashion. Here I'm cleaning the convex surface. And it's easier to clean it on like that, then drop it into the body, and I can clean the flat surface. I can check the state of that. That all looks good. Put its retainer in place. That looks fine. Put my piece in that has the frame lines. Make sure the shim goes underneath that, or shims in this case, it's got two of them. Sometimes there'll be one shim, sometimes there'll be a washer. In this case there were two shims. Don't mix the screws up. This is a finer thread on this screw, and it's certainly a flatter head on the screw, and it'd likely foul the body if you swap those screws over. Check that that's good. I'm just going to look through that, see if I can see the frame line. That looks fine. And now the arm. That'll do. Just want something to put that on while I push the bush into place. I'll use my all-purpose piece of dirty old wood, which I think you could probably serves me as a bench block for all sorts of tasks. And it's nothing fancy, it's just some offcut I happen to have, which for one reason or another never found its way into the fire. Drop that bush is fine. Rub a very light wipe of molybdenum paste on there, as lubricant. It's just a dirty mark as much as anything else. And on this front ledge here, that's where the spring, the return spring runs. I'm running a bit of molybdenum paste along there. I'll just drop the arm into place. A quick wipe of molybdenum paste on the top surface around the bush where that wavy washer will run. You can probably hear the wind in the background. It's a windy day today. It's northerly. Check that moves smoothly. Hook the return spring into place. It should be running against this front ledge. And you can see that that spring's open quite smoothly and promptly now. That action is nice and smooth. It's not sticky as it was before. And this screw at the pinhead screw, I'll just nip that a bit tighter. That looks fine. I'm just last minute check to make sure there are no offending fingerprints or bits of dust. That all looks good. That is ready to go back on the camera body. I'm cleaning the rear lens component. Time to put that back in the camera body. So first I'm cleaning the inside surface, which is nice and flat. That looks good. And the curved surface, which is the surface pointing towards the film. This is dirtier, a little bit marked. I'm interested to see how well that cleans up. I think that's an oily deposit on there. That cotton bud is coming off there very dirty. So there's certainly a haze on that surface, most likely oil haze. Of course, there's no guarantee someone hasn't stuck their big greasy finger on there at some stage. It's a popular thing for people to do. I'm looking at the surface and judging how clean that glass is by the state of the reflections on that glass. It's looking pretty good. One more round of cleaning, I think, and we'll be in business. Yeah, there is a residual coating mark there, which probably won't have any ill effect on the photos. It's probably where a droplet of moisture or something has hit it at some stage. Yes, that's most definitely on that outer surface. And this lens needs to be dropped back into the body. Well, not exactly dropped back, placed back very carefully. if I can get a grip on it. Do a little bit of reshaping work on that pair of tweezers perhaps. That looks fine. I'll just run that in. That is very close to the size of the baffle that's in there. So hopefully I'm not going to have to pull the shutter out and muck with it. Let's see how we get on. Well, just a minor error of judgment there. I can't install the rear lens group with the shutter installed in the camera, so I'm going to have to take the front off again. Back in 5 minutes. Alright, let's get our rear lens component fitted back into the shutter. That's that. Now you'll get to see how I fit the front without any, well, with a reduced amount of fighting. So first I'll put the cocking rack back into place, not the cocking rack, the transfer shaft. Make sure that's fitted into the body correctly. That's it, it's just sitting in there now, engaged with the gear. And what I'm going to do is remove the shutter release from the top of the camera. So I'm going to very carefully lift up my meter to allow me to lift out the film release and then lift out the shutter release. Make sure that my meter is correctly positioned back in there and undisturbed. Put my little bracket on there that holds it all firmly in place. Put that screw back in there. Of course you can see none of this, can you? Or you can just about see some of it. Put that screw in there. So we have the shutter release and the film release button out of the body. Get the shaft back in. My transfer shaft back in. So all I have to line up are my meter coupling and my shaft there. I'm going to cock the shutter. I did that by just revolving this gear until the shutter cocks. Let it come back to its rest position. Check that my shutter stays at B and f2.8 because that's where I'd left it. And hopefully line this up with that transfer shaft. And the meter coupling too, of course. The meter's not coupled yet. I think the transfer shaft's in. Let's wriggle the meter backwards and forwards a bit, see if I can get it to couple. Of course, the shaft on the back of that meter that couples to it, that sort of floats around a bit. So it's difficult to get it to line up correctly anyway. And it's certainly failing to line up. We'll lift that out again. Let's have a look. B f2.8. That is almost vertical. Leaning out slightly at the top, so I think it starts right there. That sounds right. Make sure that shaft is correct. Try again. With the cocking shaft at the top, the transfer shaft dropped in. The meter's coupled. I think the transfer shaft is coupled. Put the screws in. I'll put 2 in to start off with, just diagonally from that top corner to this bottom corner. Check the meter's coupled, it is. I believe the transfer shaft is coupled because the top of the body is back flush. And my next task, I'll zoom you out a little bit, is to get my shutter release back in place. Of course, that normally goes in before the meter, so I have to disturb the position of the meter in order to wriggle that in. That, I think, is it. Let's see if the shutter releases. It did. Alright, I'm pretty confident that's good. Put the film release button back in place. Likewise, this is fits in underneath the meter, so I've got to lift the meter slightly to get the tongue of this back under that meter. That's in place. To put our top cover in place, our little foreshortened top cover, which allows me to put, it just serves to hold the meter in place, stops it from being able to be disturbed. I should have put the shutter release button on there first, that would make life easier. Let's do that. Yes, we have a working shutter. Now I want to check one more thing on this. Let's set that to an eighth of a second. Cock the shutter. I want to check the self timer. Make sure that runs. If you have the coupling to from the film advance to the shutter too far advanced, the shutter isn't able to drop back far enough into the rest position to allow that to run. But that does run, so I'm quite happy that that's correct. If there's not enough backlash there, it just cannot run. Get this screw into position. This is the odd screw. It's got a large head on it. I'm not entirely sure why they chose to do that. With the Retina IIS they certainly didn't. Right, so we're back here now where we were a minute or three ago before I discovered that I couldn't get the rear group in from the back.